This is the OTB Television Network.
As the field turns for home. Big drama running in second now. My net bird looks for a way through, and he had to go way outside for it. Musket Man toward the inside. Rachel Alexandra's in front with 1 furlong to go. Musket Man moves to second. My net bird is third on the outside. The filly trying to hold on. She's clear by 3. My net bird runs at her late. Here's the wire. And the filly did it. Rachel Alexandra has defeated the Kentucky Derby winner, My Net Bird, by 3/4 of a length. Musket Man was third. The final time was 1:55 flat. A magnificent victory, an exquisite filly, and a thrill to see.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike Veach, the racing columnist with the Saratoga, and I'm Mark Cassano, welcoming you to this morning's program as we kick off an early Memorial Day holiday weekend. And over the next 85 minutes or so, well, we will look back at a historic renewal of the Preakness Stakes and Rachel Alexandra. We will also be joined by the winning rider, Mr. Calvin Burrell. Then a bit later on, well, maybe the most overlooked female in America, in my opinion, happens to be last year's champion mare, Zenyatta. Well, she debuts this afternoon in the Milady, and we will be joined by her trainer, Mr. John Sheriffs. Then later on, local resident, Saratoga resident, Jay Riffenberry, who recently got involved with his first ever thoroughbred. That thoroughbred is Mr. Fantasy, and he's on his way to Monday's prestigious Metropolitan Handicap. Time permitting, we'll get to your emails and letters as well. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this, our May 23rd edition of the program, which is being sponsored by Parting Glass Racing. Partner, good morning.
Well, good morning. Let me start with what is becoming a customary ritual on this particular show. I've made his day here. I have to hand him a cigar. Congratulations on Rachel.
Thank you very much.
She smoked him.
Yes, she did.
The smoke is on her.
Thank you.
The name Cassano was on the stub. I don't know what else. It was a terrible day for me last week. Although I did hit the Exacta. I actually had the Preakness Exacta. How about that? And I've sent the bill to Bob Baffert.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I will enjoy that very, very much, either during this Memorial Day holiday week. This is awfully early for Memorial Day. Feels a little unusual.
My favorite time of the year.
Yes. Did you enjoy the near 90-degree temperatures last week?
I took off as many clothes as I could at Lake Luzerne on Thursday afternoon when it was 92.
Just absolutely beautiful. All right. A date in the month of June. Put this down on your calendar. If you enjoy competition and you enjoy handicapping, it's Capital's Summer Handicapping Challenge at the Albany Teletheater on June 13th and 14th. I believe it's $100 to enter. All of the entry fees go back in prize money, which means, in essence, you're playing without a takeout. And the winner and runner-up receive trips to Vegas for the Fall Classic, October 1st through 3rd. I'll tell you, that's a great opportunity. So mark that down, June 13th and 14th, Capital's Summer Handicapping Challenge at the Albany Teletheater. All right. Let's get right to it. The middle jewel of racing's Triple Crown, the Preakness Stakes. Let's take a look at the field and the closing odds. A couple of things really surprised me here. Rachel, not surprisingly, was favored. I had her priced at 7-5. I thought she was very, very good value at 9-5. A couple of the real surprising things to me, the second choices. I expected Pioneer of the Nile to be around 4-1. And he was co-second choice along with the Derby hero Mind That Bird at 6-1. And then the real shocker to me was no horse in this field was more than 25-1. There were 4 horses, and I know I have to be very careful when I say this because of what happened in the Derby, but there were 4 horses in here. Flying Private, Terrain, Love Gov, and Tone It Down, who didn't appear to have very much of a realistic chance, and they were between 23 and 25 to 1. So it surprised me that the prices on the longest shots on the board were not bigger. Rachel coming back in 15 days off that monstrous victory in the Kentucky Oaks, facing males for the first time. For the call of the Preakness Stakes, here's Tom Durkin.
Ready for the start. And they're off in the Preakness. Big Drama gets off to a good start. Musket Man is there too. Here's Rachel Alexandra on the far outside. Pioneer of the Nile. And Freezing Fire has some early speed too. So they pass by for the first time. And Velasquez is taking Big Drama well out into the track. Farthest out though, it is Rachel Alexandra. Taken a bit wide going into that first turn here. Freezing Fire is third. Pioneer of the Nile is fourth. Take the Point is fifth on the outside as the filly gets floated wide. Then Papa Clem is down sixth toward the rail. General Quarters is seventh and Musket Man is eighth. And then it's Tone It Down is winning ninth on the outside. A break of 5 back to Wayne Lucas's two runners, Flying Private and Love Gov. And they're followed by Terrain and Mind That Bird. The Derby winner, where he was in the Derby at this point, he is last. Now about 12 lengths from the lead. Strong enough is the pace for him to run into. It was a 46 3/2 mile, and the filly's in front. She's in front early on here. Rachel Alexandra narrowly. Big Drama still going to stay right with her all the way. Freezing Fire looms back in third position. Half mile to go in the Preakness. On the inside, Papa Clem runs along in fourth. Far outside, Pioneer of the Nile. Now running in fifth. From the back of the pack, Mind That Bird. 13th, 12th, 11th, and he's 10th now. And there's 3 furlongs to go. Mind That Bird beginning to roll. Around the far turn here at Pimlico. Rachel Alexandra, the leader by 2 as the field turns for home. Big Drama running in second now. Mind That Bird looks for a way through, and he had to go way outside for it. Musket Man toward the inside. Rachel Alexandra's in front with 1 furlong to go. Musket Man moves to second. Mind That Bird is third on the outside. The filly trying to hold on. She's clear by 3. Mind That Bird runs at her late. Here's the wire. And the filly did it.
Newly purchased Rachel Alexandra brought immediate dividends to Jess Jackson and the racing industry by holding off Kentucky Derby hero Mind That Bird and the ultra-consistent Musket Man to capture the 134th Preakness, thus becoming the first filly in 85 years to win the middle jewel of the Triple Crown. After attending a very legitimate pace set by Big Drama, Rachel moved to the lead entering the far turn, opened up on her 12 male rivals, then had enough to hold safe the outside run of Mind That Bird and the inside-out rally of Musket Man, both who were forced to steady slightly. And she did it all while facing males for the first time, coming back in just 15 days off a phenomenal performance in the Oaks, and most impressively to me, winning while struggling with a dry, somewhat cuppy surface. If you didn't think Rachel was special going into the Preakness, my guess is you now have a bit more respect for her. This was a wonderful performance.
Well, Mark, it really was. I really enjoyed, despite getting beat here and despite falling for the Pioneer, the Nile is a good horse ready to run a big race thing. There was a lot at work for me in this race and subsequently in the day or two after it, and I really did enjoy analyzing it, not maybe in the traditional way, but first and foremost, I am going to digress a little bit for my segment here, but to me, there was a lot more than just winning the Preakness that was at stake here this day. And it almost seems unfair to say that the Preakness is a just. But for openers, Maryland racing got some attention that it deserved for this particular week. It's in tough shape like that in a lot of states. People were concerned about saving Pimlico in the Preakness, and to have the added attraction of this filly doing what she did, in my mind, made it all the more important that people get back and think about thoroughbred racing. Rachel is America's sports heroine. I don't deny that I was among the worriers when the Derby bunch was, you know, the way I would describe it is the Derby bunch, the Derby males were slugging it out in the mud pits of Louisville the day after Rachel sort of danced up there on the balcony and won the Kentucky Oaks. But when it came time for her to tangle with the Colts, she really showed them where to exit the stage. It was a marvelous, marvelous performance. She is now unbeaten in 5 starts this year after this victory, and she joined an elite group of just 10 other fillies to win an American Classic. which have had a total of 409 runnings since they all started in the 19th century. That's how rare this is. Now, she has put her owner and trainer in the position of 3 consecutive Horse of the Year titles with 2 different horses. But I say this with a little caution because some wacky voters out there have already decided that the title is hers. Well, I guess they'll be looking the other way if Mind That Bird wins the Belmont, hence 2/3 of the Triple Crown, and maybe evens the score with Rachel in 2 weeks. More on that later. I guess they'll be even saying at that point she'll still be the best 3-year-old of either sex. We've got the minor matter of the Breeders' Cup coming up and the presumed immortal Zenyatta returning to the races later today. What on earth will we do if Zenyatta remains unbeaten, Mark, and defeats Rachel in the Ladies' Classic? Or what if Zenyatta wins the Classic, a race all but given her last year? Voters, please pay attention. Couple more comments on this wonderful race. Speaking of Mind That Bird, what a wonderful affirmation of the Derby and the fascinating post-Preakness debate over whether or not he would have won with a better trip. It's tantalizing to think so. In my mind, it's an open question, but I also think last Saturday, Rachel proved herself the best horse in the field that day. The Jackson Gamble, I underline the word gamble, worked to perfection. I salute him from here on that. I think she's a dog-tired filly after the race, and I take a bit of an issue with Calvin saying, well, she didn't like the surface. I think she was flat-out exhausted the last 3/16 of a mile and won it on great courage. And speaking of Jess Jackson, he reminded all of us who would listen that one of his purposes for buying Rachel was to breed her to his Curlin and produce the kind of runner, he likes to jab, and that's okay, I admire him, that generally American breeders have not done in recent decades. This will, in fact, be the most important long-term consequence of the Jess Jackson whirlwind surrounding the Preakness. I haven't looked this up. This could be the first breeding between 2 winners of the Preakness Stakes. It will bring together a Raisinative line sire with a female family that includes a Belmont winner and will have no inbreeding through the first 4 generations. That could be a prototypical sire if, in fact, it all works out. But all hail the Queen. She deserved it. And a final random thought. For a couple of years, maybe 5, possibly 10, the whole Triple Crown thing has been the lightly campaigned horses get it done. This year, Mind That Bird and Rachel Alexandra have got lengthy career records and had the seasoning to put up the battle that they delivered last Saturday.
I say thank goodness for Jess Jackson. He is a sportsman. It is believed that he paid somewhere between $9 and $12 million for her. He had her vetted out. He bought her. He ran her back in 15 days. Her former owner, Dolphus Morrison, who made his money in the steel business, when asked if she was going to face the boys in a Triple Crown, said, and I'm paraphrasing, the Triple Crown is for stallions and fillies should race against fillies. What a waste that would have been. So far, the Triple Crown has been won by a gelding and a filly. How's that?
It's a terrific story.
So I say
Great.
thank goodness for Jess Jackson. I think he's absolutely great for the game. Even though Steve Asmussen's name will go down as the winning trainer in the 2009 Preakness Stakes, we all know that it was Hal Wiggins, and credit to Steve Asmussen because he's brought up Hal Wiggins.
Oh, that's
any number of
exactly right.
times.
I mean, that's just a tough spot for him to be in. I thought he handled it very well.
Yeah, but Hal and his staff, phenomenal job, and she is a special filly. I don't take exception with what Calvin said because when I was watching it,
Yeah.
I thought she struggled with the racetrack. She didn't settle nearly as well as she normally does, and I know the pace was quicker, but she didn't settle, and I thought she was struggling with the racetrack myself. Let's take a look. We've got another shot for you. This is an overhead shot. Let's take a look at the overhead shot. You see Rachel under the arrow. You see Mind That Bird last on the outside. What you don't see in the arrow is the horse who's 6th on the fence. That's Musket Man. Watch what happens when Abar Koa tries to get inside of Papa Clem. Papa Clem is going to drift, and Abar's got to grab a hold of him right here.
Yeah.
And of course, I've got one cold exacta with Musket Man underneath, so I got a little bit sick to my stomach. But Musket Man gets the inside-out trip. I personally, other than Mind That Bird having to steady for one jump, thought Mike Smith gave Mind That Bird a fine ride.
So do I.
I mean, this is
I agree with
Pimlico,
it, yeah.
folks. He's last. He's got 12 runners in front of him. Come on, what's Mike Smith going to do? I thought it was a fine ride. But Calvin's going to glance back. There's Mine That Bird. I agree with the fact that she was tired. She was really tired at the end, but I think she probably had just a tad left in reserve. Unusual situation with Mine That Bird all along. We had Calvin Burrell become the first rider, apparently in history, to take off a Kentucky Derby winner to ride another starter in the Preakness. Mike Smith gets the mount. I thought he put up a fine ride. Runs second, but Mike will not be riding back in the Belmont Stakes. That's because Mike is going to, and I like this, he's going to honor a prior commitment to ride at Hollywood Park on Belmont Stakes Day. But this has been, you have to admit, an unusual situation.
This is a part of a remarkable Triple Crown series. I happen to enjoy all of it because this really is what racing is all about. And, you know, everything is not perfect. And I salute Mike for going back home to the people who've been good to him. You got, what I like about Mike is he's got a good memory. He was kind of a down-and-out guy after the injuries, and he went to California. Generally, that's a tough thing to do from the East Coast. And he's become a top rider there in the Grade 1 races. And so, Mike, I'm with you on that. I am.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong, but the commitment he's honoring
is for
John Sheriffs and the Mosses.
And the Moss family. Of course, you're not wrong. No, but why wouldn't you? I mean, Calvin honored Rachel Alexandra.
You're going to honor that commitment.
You know, that's all. I mean, that's life. It's okay.
So I thought he did a fine job.
I did too.
You know, listen, you all know how much I adore Rachel Alexandra. And I'm not making excuses. Why do I have to make excuses?
She won the race.
But I do think one of the great things in sports, and interestingly, we saw it last night with Johan Santana when the Mets played the Boston Red Sox. He didn't have his A game. But when it came down to critical pitches, the Boston Red Sox were 0 for 10 against Santana with runners in scoring position. I love it in sports when Tiger Woods doesn't have his A game, and he can grind it out and put together the best score he possibly can. These are the very, very special athletes. I don't think she liked that racetrack. I don't think Calvin is making an excuse, but I think she probably brought her B game and still beat the boys.
He doesn't have to make any excuses. I take issue with it simply because it's a whole different ballgame. How do we know that her circumstances were not being with the tension of facing colts and having a different situation? She simply lays over everybody else. If the Kentucky Oaks was run on the Preakness Day track and she won by 10 or 15 or 20 lengths over 5 maiden fillies, he wouldn't even bring up whether or not she didn't handle the track. It just wouldn't look that way. This was a different thing for her. I hope she comes out okay. I'm not going to change my worry position on that. And to be honest with you, I'm at the point now where I'll be very surprised if we see her in the third leg of the Triple Crown.
Oh, I don't think we're going to see her in the Belmont either, but, you know, I'm not sure she has a whole lot she has to prove coming back in another 3 weeks.
I hope she comes back and wins 3 or 4 races. That's what I really hope for her.
Let's take a look at the complete order of finish for the Preakness Stakes, and we've got some quotes from, well, first, the winning trainer, Steve Asmussen, and I'm quoting, "What an amazing 10 days this has been. I can't tell you what a fan of the filly I've been. They, meaning the filly's former connections, Hal Wiggins, did a great job with her. Mr. Jackson has been rewarded in his faith with her. I am very blessed. Mine That Bird finishing second, beaten 1 length. His trainer, Chip Woolley, again, I'm quoting, I'm thrilled to death with the race my little horse ran. Everything was going according to Hoyle until the turn when he was fanned a little wide. I thought we had a chance at the 8th pole, but you have to give that filly credit. She's a great one." Mike Smith, the rider of Mine That Bird, said he's a tough little dude. He worked his way through there and kept on trying. If we could have gone another 16th of a mile, I think we would have tackled her. On the backstretch, I tried to duck back in, but there was a lot of traffic. I had to do what I had to do. Honestly, he's one of the best I've been on. He's very balanced. But Rachel Alexandra beat the greatest colts in the country today. You have to take your hat off to her. I thought she'd come back to me, but she kept on going, end quote. And Musket Man, a $15,000 purchase. Every time they load him in the gate, he runs his eyeballs out. Now maybe, just maybe, because he's a Yanaguska, He just can't get that last 16th,
Well,
but you know what? He's a terrific
he has
racehorse.
sure helped his sire out
Man.
already.
Derek Ryan, his trainer, was quoted as saying, "I saw Rachel Alexandra breezing at Churchill before the Oaks, and I knew she was a superstar. My horse ran well, but we got beat by a great one. She's a filly for the ages." And Abar Koa, the jockey of Musket Man, said, "No complaints at all. I had a good trip, except at one point at the 5/16 pole, and that's what we showed you, I had to stop riding for 3 jumps. I think that cost me second place." Flying Private, a very surprising 4th. I'll tell you what, I don't often say a horse who ran 5th ran a good race, but considering everything that happened to Big Drama, I thought he ran well. And considering the fact he was coming off a single sprint race, I think this is a horse with a bright future. I thought that was a very good 5th. Papa Clem, absolutely no excuse in running 6th. Terrain, no factor. Love Gov, no factor. You know, the story of General Quarters is a wonderful story, but let's face it, he isn't good enough. I mean, that's basically it. Frisian Fire ran 10th. Going down the backstretch, he was sitting a perfect trip. In fact, I'm saying to myself, I hope he doesn't split me out of the exacta, because I didn't like him at all, yet he was sitting a garden trip. What has happened to Frisian Fire? 7 weeks before the Kentucky Derby, partner, he was on top of the world. He had come off that magnificent performance in the Louisiana Derby, and then subsequently off the 7-week layoff, a poor effort in the Derby on a bad racetrack, but a dreadful effort in the Preakness.
What are you
I
going
mean,
to say?
dreadful.
What are you going to say? He's just fallen from the top.
Pioneer of the Nile struggled with that racetrack from the very start. You could see Garrett Gomez scrubbing on him very early on.
yep.
He got beat 26 lengths. That is a stunner. Tone It Down had no realistic shot. And Don Lucarelli, talk about stunned. He's got to be stunned by the performance of Take the Points. I mean, he was awful.
Terrible.
Just awful. So the complete order of finish for the 134th Preakness. Now, let's look ahead 2 weeks very quickly at the possible prospective starters for the Belmont Stakes. And first and foremost, the question mark on Rachel Alexandra. Neither of us think she's going to run. Mind That Bird. Who will ride Mind That Bird is the big question. Charitable Man, the Peter Pan winner, he worked a sharp half mile this morning in 47 4/5 over the main track at Belmont, where he is undefeated. Chocolate Candy, 5th in the Kentucky Derby, will be ridden by Garrett Gomez in the Belmont Stakes. The Lucas duo of Flying Private and Love Gov, the Nick Zito trio of Miners Escape, Brave Victory, and possibly Nowhere to Hide. Summer Bird, who was 6th in the Derby, he will be ridden in the Belmont Stakes by Joe Talamo. There's an interesting selection. And he will race with blinkers on. Summer Bird worked 7/8 of a mile this morning in 26 2 and galloped out the mile in 1:41. Mr. Hot Stuff was 15th in the Derby. He's the brother to Colonel John. And Dunkirk, 11th in the Derby as our selection, will be ridden in the Belmont by Johnny Velasquez. And that's because Johnny V rode Rags to Riches to a Belmont victory for these very connections. And Dunkirk will work Monday morning at Belmont. So there's a look at the prospective starters for the Belmont and a couple of notes. First post on Belmont Stakes Day, 11:35. And the Belmont post time will be somewhere between 6:25 and 6:30. So there you have it. Now, we are up to our first break on this morning's May 23rd edition of the program. Thank you so very much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will head out to Southern California. Now, Rachel is unquestionably the finest 3-year-old filly in the land. But the gentleman who's going to join us in a moment has a sensational filly. She's the finest older mare in the land. She is Zenyatta, and he is John Sheriffs, and John will join us after the break. As we go to this break, on the Preakness undercard, the Dixie, on the proper surface. With the scratch of Proudinski, it left number 3 parading as the 2-1 favorite. So we'll take a look at the Dixie going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with John Sheriffs right after these messages.
In a controlled tempo, Loro Lauro out there 3/4 of a length. Senior now going to try to quicken up that pace. Parading getting a little closer from third, and Mamba is fourth. Strike a Deal fifth, and Kiss the Kid racing sixth. Baltimore Bob is seventh. Musketeers on the outside, then Just As Well. Back to Wesley second to last, and Nightscape trailing the field. Into the turn. Lauro still holding on to the lead by a head from Senior. Parading out there to join them. Strike a Deal called on for run from fourth, just 2 lengths in the front, followed by Mamba. Baltimore Bob trying to sneak through down to the inside as they are into the stretch at the 3/16. Lauro still fending off Challenger Parading, but Parading now pushing by to put ahead in front with 1 furlong to go. Strike a Deal, and here is Just As Well quickening up out in the center. Just As Well coming on the outside. Just As Well closing the gap on Parading. Parading holding on, and it's Parading and Kent Desormo from Just As Well, and Wesley may have been third from Lauro.
I watch it all the time. I love watching the OTB shows with the personalities, and then I watch when I'm at home. I've got it on watching the races, and it's great now that they've got the replay of it live. You know, like 2 or 3 minutes after post. So, you know, they flip it off in 2 minutes. I'm gonna get to see the live race. So, I always take my program home with me, and if I'm not back at the barn, I'm watching it at home.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left, I'm Mark Asano. And the Dixie goes to Parading for Shug and Kent by a half length over Just As Well. His first graded stakes victory on the proper surface. Well, last week, one of our guests was Hal Wiggins, who had the finest 3-year-old filly in the land in Rachel Alexandra. This morning's first guest is the man who has the finest older mare in training in America, in Champion Zenyatta, who will make her 2009 debut later this afternoon in the Milady. Joining us live via telephone from Southern California, Mr. John Sheriffs. John, Mark, and Mike welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Hi, good morning.
Morning,
Good
John.
morning, John.
John, Zenyatta was entered 3 weeks ago in the Louisville Distaff, but was withdrawn. Why did you decide to scratch her that day?
Well, I decided it had rained and the track was a little wet. I did want to start her on an off-track first race back, and when I went out at 10 o'clock and they floated the track, so I decided to scratch her.
John, any potential problems in getting her, prepared, cranked up for her comeback, then having to go to a plan B?
Not really, no. It was, it's one of those things where she got a little break because the weather was, as you know, Saturday it rained, and I think Sunday and Monday it rained there, so she couldn't train for those 3 days, and so just got a little rest, and then came back here to California and has done very well since then.
So how is she doing coming into her 2009 debut in this afternoon's Milady?
She's doing great. She is just doing super.
John, our audience is about to take a look at her last start. This, a victory in last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff / Ladies Classic. She'll be coming from last on the screen. Tell us, has she changed at all from the last time we saw her?
Not really. She's maybe put on a little bit of weight because she hasn't run yet, and she's been training very well. I think the break helped her a lot. She had a, not a real long campaign, but a tough campaign. So she's just probably a little bit heavy and pretty sharp right now.
John, she's 5 years of age now. Is she still enthusiastic with her training?
Yes, she is. She one of her workouts, I think the workout before last, she showed that little that real quick burst, where she closed the gap really fast, and that's always an indication that she's doing well.
She is 9 for 9. 8 of those victories have come over synthetic surfaces. But, John, I can make a pretty strong case that the best race of her career was her only start on dirt in the Apple Blossom. Any plans to bring her east later this year for some of the major summer stakes?
It's difficult with the Breeders' Cup being on the West Coast, so not wanting to ship her around too much. I don't know. We'd have to talk with Dottie, the racing manager for the Mosses, and Mr. Moss, and kind of make a decision there.
John, you're in a pretty unique position, training a sensational race mare. So I think our audience would be very interested to hear from you. What did you think of Rachel Alexandra's performance in last week's Preakness?
Well, I'd like to go back to her performance in the Kentucky Derby, because hardly ever as a trainer do I say wow after a race, and I had to say wow after that one. And then her performance in the Preakness, I thought just emphasized what a good filly she was, because Calvin said she didn't like the track and she gutted it out. So I thought it was also a very good performance.
John, obviously one of the things that made the Preakness so special was we had a filly beating the boys. The million-dollar question everybody wants to know, particularly me, will Zenyatta face males at some point this year?
We have to sort of take it race by race. If she's in the same position she is, or similar position at the end of the year, then that'll, of course, be a decision that Dottie and the Mosses will make.
John, history, you got an opportunity to really make history here, at least at the end of the year. No filly or mare has ever won the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, is Dottie, are the Mosses entertaining any thoughts at this point of making her final start of the year the Classic rather than the Distaff?
It's hard to project out that far, but they've talked about it.
John, will this, I guess this is one of the few questions I hope to get a no as the answer, will this be Zenyatta's last year of racing?
Yes.
It will.
Yeah.
Well, that is unfortunate. Obviously not the answer we wanted to hear, but John, one final question before I send you over to Michael. This is pretty interesting because you're bringing her back in the Milady, and the filly she's got to beat is your other filly, Life is Sweet. Why run them against each other?
We tried to avoid that by going to Kentucky, but it didn't work out, so this is the next logical step. So, at this point you take them individually. They're owned by different people, and you have to treat them that way.
All right, well, for a discussion on, probably the major threat to Zenyatta this afternoon, here's Michael.
John, I'm very glad to speak with you again this morning, and before I ask you about your filly Life is Sweet, I just want to say you are the greatest problem solver that I've seen in a long time. So if you can come up for something to placate my partner Mark over Zenyatta's future, please let us know at some point. But anyways, let's go to Life is Sweet. John, this filly has quite a bit of turf in her pedigree underneath, and she raced pretty good in good company last year on it. So when you got her, did you instantly plan on putting her on the main track, or did you have the other thing in the back of your mind as well?
No, we were always, Marty had always wanted to try her on the synthetic surface, so as long as she was working well on it, that was the plan, is to keep her on the main track.
Well, she's coming off a pretty doggone good race and a very, very important race in California, the Grade 1 Santa Margarita. We're going to take a look at this terrific score, and when it comes up on the screen, she'll be number 2 here, last top of the screen. But a couple of related things here, if you will. You know, she was so good that day that the trouble line said she inhaled her rivals. You just don't read that very much in the past performance line. And it came at the end of a monthly succession of graded victories. She's gotten very sharp and very comfortable with you and in her style. My question's not so much about this race, and we're going to see her rallying wide here, but rather the change to Hollywood Park today is the venue. It's a different synthetic. Is that on your mind?
Yes, it is, because as we saw at Oak Tree last year, a lot of the turf horses did well on the pro ride. So I'll have to see how she does on the cushion track here. It's an entirely different surface.
John, she's a storm cat, and storm cats are well known for behavioral and temperamental problems. How is she to be around, and how does she take to her training?
You know, she is a storm cat, and she does have her quirks. Yesterday we took her down the chute, and usually the pony breaks her off on the other side of the track, but today, because she's going to run today, so yesterday I gave her a little shorter gallop, took her down the chute, wheeled, jogged her around, and when she left the pony, her left leg went out about 3 feet as she tried to cow kick him leaving. So, I mean, she was,
Wow.
Yeah, I said, I've never seen a horse do that so viciously, you know, she just really went after him. But that's her. She's, when she's sharp, she's quick.
Well, gosh. Finally, John, for me, and switching gears just a beat up, but, you know, racing fans in the East here, we read about the troubles in California with the reduced dates and whatnot. You know, I'd like to ask you to comment upon, you know, if you will, the state of the game out there and, you know, your hopes for the future. Nobody enjoys reading stories like this.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I know it. You know, it's funny. I was walking in the track this morning, and I met somebody and telling me about some person that was a lady in the racing office that passed away. And I was just thinking, you know, racing should be all about the celebration. And I think we need to, you know, enjoy the horses and watch them perform and just start celebrating it a little more instead of finding everything that's wrong with it.
I'm with you there, John.
You know, and California, obviously California's a funny state. Everybody knows that California is just a little bit different. They're a little bit out there. So I think California people react a little faster and maybe aren't as patient. But, you know, California is great racing.
No doubt about it. Well, I was very happy to speak with you again today, John, and here's Mark for some final thoughts.
Well, John, I loved your response about celebrating the horse. Why not consider celebrating part of your summer here in Saratoga by bringing Zenyatta for a couple of the stakes? We'll look forward to it. John, thank you. As always, we appreciate your time. Good luck this afternoon with the Champ and with Life is Sweet and the Milady, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care,
John.
John.
John Sheriffs, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say it. It's a somewhat similar situation to Rachel Alexandra. I said very early on that I thought Zenyatta had an opportunity to be a great filly, to be a Hall of Fame filly, and she obviously does at this point. But I do think it's a waste. I understand what John is saying about the Breeders' Cup being in Southern California and not wanting to ship, okay? And that's why the Breeders' Cup shouldn't be in the same location 2 years in a row. But I guess not enough of the board of directors understand that. So, if she's going to stay in Southern California and beat up, you know, these fillies and mares, you're not going to get anything out of it. She is sensational. She can not only come east and win, she can race against males. She's physically much stronger than males. There is no reason why you wouldn't run her against boys.
Unless there's a reason that we don't know or a reason that they would rather not discuss. Who the heck knows? I mean, I'm with you on the Breeders' Cup. They did what they did. I understand why they did it. I thought it was a very, very aesthetic, artistic, visual success to be in the sunny venue the way it was. We may not like it. We may not even say this if it was a normal dirt cert rather than synthetic, but I would say this. She fits the definition of being ready to race against the boys, certainly more than Rachel Alexander was in my mind. I thought John made the plan to come to Kentucky for the distaff was clever. Very, very clever to have another grade 1 on dirt and to get that out of the way, and it explains the situation today where now they're facing off each other. But I mean, it's still about money. The money's out there, and I understand it. Once you get to the midsummer, do you get your final prep on a dirt surface, or you just stay home for 2, 4, or in this case, maybe 5 mil? Is it 5 or 6, the Classic now?
I'm not.
Do you stay home for 5 or 6 by staying there? I mean, that's just it. I mean, it's reality.
She's great. I think it's a waste of her talent.
I hope she continues to be great.
Beating up on these inferior
And
fillies
for me, it's a less of a Hall of Fame question because most of the races will be out there than maybe for some other people. I recognize her for what she is. She did what she did under the conditions she was giving them. I have to respect that. I mean, not too many people probably want to tangle with her. So, you know.
The males would be frightened of her,
that's what I'm talking
just
about.
like the 3-year-olds were frightened of
That's what I'm
Rachel.
talking
So
about,
thank you to John so very much. And we are up to our next break on this morning's May 23rd edition of the program. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, Mr. Calvin Burrell, America's Rider, will join us. So Michael and I will be back with Calvin Burrell right after these messages.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano. Our thanks once again to John Sheriffs for having joined us. Okay, our next guest is enjoying overnight success after 27 years of very hard work. He is America's jockey.
It's just, I mean, what he's done in these 2 races is Michael Jordan in the finals. I mean, he's not unstoppable. So,
America loves Calvin. Jay Leno loved Calvin.
That's
He
good
charmed
segment.
the Queen of England.
Yeah.
Here's a man who's engaged to be married to Lisa Funk, but he's in love with another female. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Calvin Burrell. Calvin, welcome back to Down the Stretch, and all congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it.
Calvin, did we see Rachel Alexandra at her best in last Saturday's Preakness?
No, sir. You didn't see her at her best. I mean, she was at her best going in, you know, sir, but she was struggling a lot on the racetrack. I think the track guy thought it was supposed to rain. You know, they announced for a lot of rain, and it got black and everything. I thought they would, you know, have a thunderstorm, and I don't think he wet it like he was supposed to, you know, so it got real fluffy, and it's a different track from anywhere else. You know, it's sand, and it dries up, and no, you didn't see the real Rachel. I mean, believe me, she went on hard there, you know. She was very exhausted after the race. So I'll tell you what, might have took a lot out of her because she struggled more than anything.
Calvin, let's talk about the trip from the extreme outside post. That certainly dictated to some degree how you were going to ride her. Talk about the break and the run into the first turn, if you would, please.
Well, we had, me and Steve had talked about it, and, but what went on, when we got in the gates, I was going to let him start braking, lay about third, going into the turn, or, go ahead and clear him and try to get over. But the one horse flipped, and we wind up being in there about 60 seconds, whatever, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. And she kind of got, kind of lost focus. The crowd, I was so close to the fence, and the crowd was hollering, and stuff. And when she left there, she stumbled a little bit, and then I had to kind of, gear her up a little bit because I was going to get hung in line 10 wide, But like I say, I didn't go that fast there, so I was very comfortable. But when we headed down the backside, when I had done keyed her up a little bit, then she grabbed a hold to the bit, and which she don't usually does, but she was struggling. And at the same time, like I say, we went a little quick down the backside. But she, like I said, she's a race mare. She's the best, and, she showed it down the lane. When the horses come up to me, she just kept going, So, when you ride them kind of horses, you got to ride them with confidence, coming out the 13th hole. It was just the luck of the draw, but, I won't take my word back. I think she's the best horse in the country, and she proved it to overcome what she did. If anybody knows about the track, the way she really, really didn't handle the track.
Calvin, I presume heading down the backstretch, you could have gone on by Big Drama whenever you wanted to. What were your thoughts about, when to go, when to push the button on her?
Well, I've ridden there in the past, so, I could have went by him, but we were going pretty good already. We went like the half, I guess, 46 and change, And then when I got away from him, she pricked her ears back up like she usually. But at the same time, she was still struggling, so I had to kind of keep the bitting them out. And I really didn't push the button until about the quarter pole. Then, I thought it was time to go and get away from him and see, if we can just go ahead from there and hang on like we did, in case something would come running, and just to let her go on and do her thing, because she likes to run. When she wants to go, you gotta let her go, and that's what we did, and we hung on, like I say, sir, she was so exhausted because she fought the track so bad, it was unbelievable. You wouldn't imagine.
Calvin, with that struggling that she did, at any point during the final quarter mile, did you think you were in trouble?
No, sir. I think this filly, when you're going to look her in the eye, she will belly down and give you some more. I've been on her before, and, I know how good she is. I think she would have just, re-broke again, like we were galloping out, and might come to, shake my hand, hit me on the hand, and she took off again, when she kind of got her feet back under her. So I'm not, no, sir. I wouldn't never really concerned. No.
Calvin, you said she was pretty much exhausted after the race, struggling with the racing surface as much as she did. Any word, and we are of course taping on a Friday, any word from Steve Asmussen as of yet to you or your agent Jerry Hissam as to her participation in the Belmont?
No, sir, not yet. No, they might let me know something Monday, but now I haven't, talked to Steve and everything. She come back good and everything, but, they really don't know yet, and Mr. Jackson. But I think he'll let me know Monday or Tuesday what, when we work her back and see what happens, and we're going to go from there.
And Calvin, you obviously rode Mind That Bird to a memorable victory in this year's Kentucky Derby. What is your situation with trainer Chip Woolley and the possibility of getting back on Mind That Bird for the Belmont Stakes?
Oh, I'll be back on him. If my filly doesn't run, I'll be back on him. We didn't talk to him, and we got a backup rider. I think Gary Gomez or somebody else. I think, he's got two backup riders in case the filly decides to run, you know. So, you know, I get on the colt and work him and everything. Same thing we did before, but and I got to thank him for that, you know, and everything for, you know, waiting for me. But me and the colt get along real good, and he knows that, you know. So he's given, you know, like he told me, he said, Calvin, don't worry about nothing. I'm gonna sit and wait until the last minute if I have to, you know. And I got to give him a lot of respect for that, because, you know, he could put anybody he wants on the colt right now, especially with, you know, riders like Gary Gomez. They're not riding the race, and, you know, they got a bunch of good riders right now not riding the race. But I gotta, like I said, I gotta give him a lot of credit to sit and wait for me, you know, because but he knows I like the colt, and, you know, I fit the colt good, and the colt run a big race last time, and he knows, you know, going into the next race, going a mile and a half, you know, you're gonna have to ride him the right way to get there, I think. And really and truly, if Rachel's not in there, I think he can win it.
Well, Calvin, that was obviously a very impressive victory by Mind That Bird, albeit surprising. It was very impressive in winning the Derby. So
but it wasn't no fluke, though. I'll tell you what. You know, when he come back and run that second in the Preakness, you know, I'm happy he did, because it wasn't a fluke. You know, it's not that he just run a big race that day in the Derby, and I think people realize that.
Calvin, how difficult a decision was it for you and for your agent, Jerry Hissam, to choose Rachel over the Kentucky Derby winner to ride in the Preakness?
Well, it wasn't, you know, we had talked to shipping them before the race, you know, before I win the Derby and everything, you know, and they knew up front going in, no matter what, if ever we hook, I'd ride the filly. You know, she's my dream horse. I mean, I think she's the best horse in the country right now. And, you know, they knew going in, so they didn't have no questions asked. And, you know, the colt got lucky and win. And, like I said, they sat till the last minute last time to wait to see what, you know, Mr. Steve would do and Mr. Jackson. So, you know, I got to give him a lot of confidence to do that for, you know, for me. But, you know, like he says, you know, I fit him so good, he'll wait, you know, until the last minute if he has to. And like I say, I really appreciate that, because I like the colt. I think he can win the Belmont. To tell you the truth.
Calvin, you made an unprecedented decision to take off the Kentucky Derby winner to ride another horse in the Preakness. Did that cause added pressure to you? Honestly, were there some sleepless nights leading up to the Preakness?
No, sir, no. I thought my filly was the best filly, you know. I mean, you know, I've never been on one like her, and I had no doubt. You know, I knew where I was going, and, you know, Chip and them knew that, you know, right after the races, you know, when Mr. Jackson bought her, I was kind of upset because I didn't think I'd get the rider back. And so I went the next morning, went after the day they bought it, and Mr. Jackson and his wife were there to pick her up. And, you know, I kind of cried a bit. My tears were coming out of my eyes, you know, walking away from the barn. And, you know, his wife told me, you know, she said, don't worry, it's all right. And Mr. Jackson said, she's yours, you know, for her 3-year-old campaign, she's yours, and don't worry about nothing. And I said, so I got to give him a lot of credit, and I appreciate it. And then, you know, like I said, man, I think she's just the greatest horse in the country right now. She's an unbelievable horse.
So she was able to beat the boys, first filly in 85 years to beat the boys and win the Preakness when she wasn't at her best. You can guarantee our audience, Calvin, that we did not see the best of Rachel last Saturday, that later in the year, if she faces the boys again and brings her A game, she'll do a number on them?
Yes, sir.
Calvin, 2 Kentucky Derbies and a Preakness now, and the opportunity, hopefully, to win your own personal Triple Crown this year.
Right.
Calvin, this is the kind of filly who can really take you places, and one of those places might actually be racing's Hall of Fame. Have you ever thought about the possibility of getting in the Hall of Fame?
No, not really, but a lot of people told me that I ought to be, you know, because I'm good for the, you know, the Hendricks, you know, right now, and people love me right now, and like I say, you know, she's an unbelievable horse. I mean, you know, Mr. Jackson put up the money to buy her, and he knew what he was looking at. I can tell you that. And if you know we get there, we get there. If we don't, we don't. Like I said, but a lot of people had told, you know, said that, you know, I need to be in the World of Fame, and you know, it'd be a big accomplishment in my life. But I'm just looking to win the Belmont, you know, next trip. Any horse I ride, I think I got a hell of a shot to win.
Calvin, you've been riding a lot of years. Have you ever ridden any better than you're riding right now?
No, I can't say I've ridden any better, but I haven't ridden the kind of horses I am riding right now. You know, I got to give a lot of credit to Mr. Carl to give me the opportunity to ride Street Sense, you know, to, you know, put me on the map and show the people that I could ride a good horse. And, you know, I think that's all you need is a good horse, a good combination, you know, and I got to give a lot of credit to Mr. Carl, you know, because there was never no pressure. I mean, I rode Street Sense all his starts, and like he told me, you know, win, lose, or draw, he's going to be your horse. He said, I want to win 2 more races in my career. He said, I want to win the Derby and the race at Saratoga, the Travers, and he said, and the rest of them is left up to you. He said, if we win, good. If we don't, we don't. But he said, these are the 2 races I want to win. I said, all right, Mr. Carr. And that was after we win the Breeders' Cup. So I tell you what, he did a good job with Street Sense, and he gave me a lot of courage to ride him. You know, I was never under pressure to ride that horse.
And Mr. Hal did a pretty good job with Rachel, didn't he?
He did a hell of a job. Matter of fact, he run, you know, you got to give him as much credit as Steve in the last race, you know, I mean, because, I mean, Steve only had about, 6-7 days, so you got to give the whole crew, they had it ready to run, you know, for the Preakness. I mean, he did a hell of a job.
I'm guessing it's probably an awful lot of fun to be Calvin Burrell right about now.
Yeah, it is, sir. I tell you what, it's a dream, you know, everybody's dream. But it's just coming true, you know, and we put a lot of hard work into it, me, my agent, and, you know, my family behind me, my fiance, you know, and so it all works out, believe me, if you, like I say, you know, kids nowadays, if you have a dream and a guidance on the way, somebody can help you get there, you'll get there.
Calvin, congratulations. Great job in winning the Derby. Great job in capturing the Preakness. All the best in a couple of weeks in the Belmont Stakes, and thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch.
I appreciate it. God bless.
Calvin Burrell, ladies and gentlemen, the regular rider of Rachel Alexandra. He is 18 plus years of doing interviews. He's got to be the most down-to-earth interview. He's just, that's what he is. He's terrific. Just honest, and he is America's rider right now.
He sure is, and it's the American dream. I mean, it's wonderful.
Just great. So thanks to Calvin so much. And we are up to our final break on this morning's, the start of the Memorial Day holiday weekend, and we appreciate you having taken time out of your schedule to have joined us this morning. When Michael and I return, our final guest of the morning. This is a local gentleman from Saratoga Springs who recently got involved in a partnership, his first ever horse. And he's got a pretty nice one for his first ever horse.
He does have a pretty nice one.
Mr. Fantasy is on his way to Monday's Met Mile, and Jay Riffenberry will join us after the break. As we go to the break, last Saturday at Belmont Park, the Grade 2 Shoevy. The 25-cent to the dollar favorite was number 1, Seattle Smooth. There was not much smooth about her journey in the Shoevy. So we'll take a look at the Shoevy going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Jay Riffenberry right after these messages.
It's Granted Tiger leading here by 3/4 of a length. Color Me Up is in between horses with Are We Dreamin' on the outside. The half mile in 45 and 4. Sea Chanter's on the move on the far outside. Seattle Smooth is going to need some racing room. She's down at the rail, striking Tommy Sue alongside. Granted Tiger has the lead as they come for the quarter pole. Sea Chanter on the far outside, now moving into second. Color Me Up is third, then Seattle Smooth. The field enters the stretch, 3/4 in 1:10 and 2. It's Color Me Up on the outside, Sea Chanter. Seattle Smooth is under the whip, now moves to the outside under Ramon Dominguez. They're inside the 8th pole. It's Color Me Up, Sea Chanter, Seattle Smooth on the outside. The three of them come to the line in the Chevy, and Seattle Smooth got it. Seattle Smooth the winner. Then Color Me Up and Sea Chanter.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Casano. Our thanks to Calvin for joining us once again. And Seattle Smooth for Tony Dutrow and Ramon. Not exactly like a 25-cent to a $1 favorite is supposed to, but she got clear in time to score a 3/4 length victory over a 19-1 shot. Color Me Up in the Chevy. Okay, to introduce this morning's final guest, he's batting third behind John Sheriffs and Calvin Burrell. That's not too bad. Here's Michael.
Well, this is going to be a lot of fun this morning, Mark and audience, because we have with us Jay Riffenberry. And this kind of brings to mind something that John Sheriff said in the 2 interviews back when I asked John about the state of affairs in California. And trainer John Sheriff said, you know, I wish we'd concentrate more on the positive things that happen and focus on the horse. Well, we're talking to a fellow right now who likes to think positive and who loves having his horse, Mr. Fantasy. So, Jay, if you are there this morning, welcome to Down the Stretch with Mark and Mike and our audience from the Capital OTB studio in Schenectady.
Michael, Mark, thank you very much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Well, Jay, we're really happy to have you. And before we get to Mr. Fantasy, I would like you to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them what you do for a living.
Well, I conduct motivational leadership training seminars all over the country. So having a horse or being part of a owner to a horse called Mr. Fantasy, I think it's pretty much in good alignment for what I do, to say to speak. But I travel around the country and share a message entitled No Excuse to all different walks of life, from CEOs to students and everything in between.
Jay, you are a part of the West Point Thoroughbred Group as a partner in there with Mr. Fantasy. I think our audience would really enjoy you telling them the circumstances of meeting Terry Finley, the president of West Point Thoroughbreds.
Certainly. Ironically, my son was waiting tables at the Parting Glass, which, of course, you're very familiar with. And it was after the Jim Dandy, where Macho again had won. And Jared, my son, had overheard Terry Finley and his gang talking about West Point. And my son just leaned over and said, well, my father went to West Point. And then Terry said, well, you got to have him give me a call. Found out that he was the class of 1986. I was the class of 1980. We arranged a meeting. One thing led to another. Jared and I had headed down to the paddock before race 2 during one of the days, and we went over to the reading room, and one thing, I met Mr. Fantasy, and there you go. I said, this is perfect.
Well,
it was absolutely meant to be.
It really was. And on the pattern of one thing led to another, I think it's pretty interesting how Terry himself welcomed you to racing and introduced you to it. If you will, tell that part to our audience.
Well, of course, living in Saratoga, I'm always around racing, but now being a part of it, it's like night and day. To actually have what I guess I could correlate to a child being in a big event and looking forward to the potential of a victory puts a whole nother light on just being part of a entity where you get to meet so many wonderful people. I mean, I've made more new contacts just by being a part of West Point Thoroughbred than I have in many other venues. And just the people who were part of West Point were terrific. And I've really generated some nice friendships with some of the folks there. So it's been a wonderful experience, and it's just so exciting. I mean, that first race, the primary owner, Nick Camerano, had mentioned to me that he just said to me, "You're so spoiled," because it was the first race, and he won by 10.5 lengths, and down at Aqueduct, and it was just really incredible.
And I know you had a great time that day, and you answered my next question. You're so thorough here, but 2 races, 2 unbeaten starts, went to the Gotham, very important race. You finished 3rd, but right after that, there was some talk of the Wood Memorial. But West Point and everybody kind of talked about maybe changing plans. Talk about that time frame, if you will.
Sure. Well, those guys are the experts. And after the Gotham, and of course, Mr. Fancy lost to I Want Revenge, which was the favorite in the Derby before his injury, and then got 3rd right behind Imperial Council, who was actually racing in the Met Mile as well this Memorial Day, where Mr. Fantasy will be running. But that transition... we were all enthusiastic. The Wood Memorial, the potential, the Preakness, so on and so forth. But I think Mr. Fantasy, because of his youth, I mean, he will only be literally 3 on May 27th. He's a little rowdy, and I think they wanted to get him to settle down a little bit mentally and emotionally. I mean, he certainly has the physical attributes, and he's got the speed. So Monday's going to be very interesting.
He's a fine, fine young horse, and the Withers we're going to take a look at now, John, Jay, when they get it up momentarily, and he will be number 5 on the screen. This is kind of just a sleek score. You decided on this race eventually after the Gotham, so 2 parts here. The first part is, why pick this one? And then the second part is, you had a graded victory.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one because of a little bit of the distance.
Yep.
And also I believe that with, for example, the Preakness and making some of those decisions, he was a little rowdy at the Withers.
Okay.
And so right now they have been schooling him to be calm. I mean, he's in Belmont. He didn't have to travel to the Preakness. We didn't want him to do that. We thought we would train as far as just, getting him to be calmer. And for Monday, he's basically walking across the street. I mean, he is stabled there at Belmont. So I think that, if all the ducks are in order, this should be a pretty fine day, hopefully.
The Met Mile, Jay, is a huge, huge race for a horse that's a stallion prospect. This guy has a wonderful pedigree. He's got a couple of New York Derby winners in there, as well as the Big Apple Triple winner from last year. Tell our audience, if you will, your thoughts about heading down there Monday for the Grade 1 Met Mile and all that it means.
Well, you have a variety of, I'm sure most of the audience is aware that it's not 3-year-olds. There's a few of them in there, but it's 4-year-olds as well. And so I think this is a step up. Mr. Fantasy will be riding with Lucy on his back at 109, so he's actually only, I think the lightest that they're carrying is 108, and that's Imperial Council with Fuentes on him. So it'll be interesting to see how the weight works out there. But Mr. Fantasy's got the speed. I mean, if he gets out the gate and hangs on, I think he will persevere through this. Of course, we're very excited about this, and if he does win this, his ability to be considered one of the best stallions around is certainly there. To be a sire, to possibly go the New York Triple this year. Certainly he's going to come up in Saratoga, maybe for the I forget the King.
That would be the Albany, maybe?
Pardon me?
The Albany handicap?
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
If not the
King's Bishop.
Yeah, the King's Bishop
That's
is
right.
the one that Yep, they're looking at the King's Bishop,
Oh,
even
wow.
even beyond, say, the Travers for the mere fact of distance again.
Yeah. Oh, boy, that would be wonderful to see him in Saratoga in another Grade 1. Well, Jay, I'm very glad that you joined us this morning. It was a pleasure talking with you on the show. And most important, enjoy Monday at Belmont Park and bring home a lot of money with Mr. Fantasy.
It would be great, but I just want to share that those listening, it's such a fun adventure, and it was worth my investment from the week I got in, just by meeting all the wonderful people and all the networking that takes place and being part of a whole new world.
It sure has been evident. Jay, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Jay.
it.
Good luck on Monday.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Hopefully we'll knock him dead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Jay Riffenberry, part owner of Mr. Fantasy and the West Point Group for the Met Mile on Monday. And you know something, a fellow that's enjoying racing this much with his career, zone in on this, particularly if it's a big day Monday.
I'm just not certain, since Jay doesn't have a great basis of comparison. This is his first ever horse. How difficult it is to have your first horse achieve what Mr. Fantasy has up to this point, and an opportunity to run well on Monday in the Met Mile.
In one of our talks during the wintertime, and it was probably after the first level allowance victory, he mentioned the fellow who said to him, you know, Jay, you're spoiled. He really came to realize, once he realized how many people buy parts or all of horses, his first horse is a graded stakes winner running in the Metropolitan Handicap, the Eastern race for older horses at a mile.
That's a pretty good start. Okay, we have got, I believe, 8 emails and letters to get to, and we've got one beginning with
okay, here's number
John.
1 to Mark and Mike from John. Would like your views on the following comments from trainer Gary Studi in a TVG interview. Quote from trainer Gary: I've been kind of against synthetics the whole time, and I think a few more people are starting to agree with me now. I run a lot fewer horses than I used to. Seems like I used to have 3 times as many horses in the barn as on the ranch, and now it's 3 times as much on the ranch as at the barn. It seems like if they start to go sore behind, it doesn't matter what you do, you just can't get them right. Honestly, I've given away about 15 horses in the last year with bowed tendons. I have heard that, John. I've always been concerned that there's been a rush to judgment on the benefits of synthetic tracks compared to dirt. This is John speaking now. And the evidence seems to be mounting that there are dangers inherent to synthetic tracks. In an industry that often drags its feet on necessary changes in other areas, it just seems that in this case, many states and tracks rush to mandate or change to synthetics without due diligence and proper study. John, I couldn't agree with you more on the mandate. I think that was a very foolish thing for California to do. And I would like you to know, however, that on the whole spectrum of things, one of the reasons synthetics are popular, and in fact for training bills, is many owners have told me on the synthetics, my vet bills, my repair bills are lower. This has to be factored in. I appreciated Gary Studi's remarks, and I do know that the muscle things are a big issue on synthetics that maybe aren't properly maintained. But your letter is very good, and citing Gary was good. Thank you for writing.
I have heard of many more soft tissue injuries with the synthetic surfaces. I personally believe that an ideal situation, and this cannot happen at various venues, I think an ideal situation would be to have synthetic training surfaces and to race them on good old-fashioned dirt. From Bill in Albany: while I know the stories getting the major ink these days are, who is Calvin Burrell riding, who is riding Mind That Bird, and if the filly is going to run, I think another story is of utmost importance to this game that we all love. And Bill is talking about the situation which this past week happened twice. Once at Hollywood Park and once at Penn National. And that is when the tote machines failed to lock at post time. And wagering for these races continued beyond post. In the case of the race at Penn National, there was about 152,000 in the pools for that race. And Penn National declared that contest a non-betting race. Rather than to figure out the tickets that were purchased prior to post time, they just declared it a non-betting event. And it obviously infuriated those folks who handicapped the race well and bet, you know, in a timely fashion. For people who think this is a random occurrence, they had better think again. I hope you bring this up on this week's show. Well, obviously, it wasn't a random occurrence last week since it happened twice. And let's face it, Bill, you bring up a great point. The industry has to work on, and supposedly they have been, working on the integrity of the tote system. That is absolutely critical. Bill, thank you very much.
From Harrison, dear gentlemen, 2 matters are on my mind. The first, Mind That Bird has revealed what a lackluster crop of males this is. His running style, swooping from last to defeat all of the other males in the Derby and Preakness, is ill-suited for continued success. He reminds me of Crypto Clearance, who started his career but ended up finishing races by clunking up for 4th, held by a nose from getting into the triple and burning lots of money. Runners from the back of the pack seem to eventually start the habit of losing as they find trouble in front and race wide. The Derby win was carried by Burrell's supernatural relationship with the rail at Churchill Downs. Yes, there was surely horse underneath him that day, but the combination of bad track, bow rail, and undistinguished field made this win happen. Harrison continues, those who think Mind That Bird is starting to look real after closing behind Rachel should consider that every animal he beat is a typical underachiever in this crop. Thank goodness for Rachel in the Preakness, lest we should have to contemplate the possibility of Mind That Bird joining the Triple Crown greats. And item number 2, a viewer recently wrote you of his group of friends selection of the 10 best racehorses of all time, ending with Curlin in number 10. Curlin was very good for a while, of course, but some of his losses, the Belmont, the Breeders' Cup Classic, belie the notion of his greatness. The horse of the decade is in Vasseur, unbeaten and unbeatable after coming to the States, not Curlin. As always, concludes Harrison, thanks for your excellent show, which is every bit as entertaining and fun as it is informative.
Harrison, while I will agree with you that one-run deep closers, it is far more difficult for them to get on a roll because, let's face it, you are often going to run into some trouble. I will leave you with a name, Zenyatta, who up to this point has been pretty good with that running style. Thanks, Harrison.
From Jim, Mark, and Mike, if you win the Kentucky Oaks, then you win the Preakness and then the Belmont. Doesn't that deserve a special title other than perhaps Filly of the Year? I think it would myself. Nothing comes to mind right now, but it might be fun to kick it around if Rachel does pull off the seemingly impossible. Jim, thanks for the comment. If she does it in 2 weeks, I'll come up with a name.
From Scott, Mark and Mike, that race, meaning the Preakness, set up perfectly for what I was expecting, except one unfortunate miscalculation. The filly's heart held on gamely while my exacta horses were left breathing down her neck in 2nd and 3rd. And I don't, think you're alone with that. Scott adds, if body language speaks volumes, I am of the belief that the filly needs plenty of time off. Because she looked totally spent in the winner's circle, she should be rested until at least summer to start training for a possible Travers run against Mind That Bird, Quality Road, I Want Revenge, and the other, and I don't think I Want Revenge will be back by that time, and other promising 3-year-olds who missed the Derby. If that's not possible, they should just wait until the Breeders' Cup preps to prepare her for the Classic against the best 3-year-olds and up. She has nothing further to prove running in the Belmont, and another race so soon could sadly end her most likely brilliant career. We already have rags to riches as a barometer of the toll a 1.5 miles can take on a fresh filly, and Rachel is no fresh filly. The only thing about that is everybody has brought up rags to riches racing 1.5 miles against the boys, which knocked her out, but nobody talks about how badly she stumbled at the start, and there's no doubt in my mind that, not 12 furlongs, hurt her. Finally, what would be the weight allowance for a 3-year-old female? We know 3-year-old males get 5 pounds in the Breeders' Cup Classic. What would a 3-year-old female get? All fillies and mares, Scott, get an additional 3 pounds, so that if Zenyatta were to run against the males in the Classic, even though she towers over them physically and maybe on ability as well, Zenyatta would get 3 pounds as a 5-year-old mare. If Rachel were to run against the boys in the Breeders' Cup Classic, she would get 8 pounds. Thank you very much, Scott.
From John, I think the connections of Mind That Bird missed a great chance to make the Preakness even more interesting by not naming Chantal Sutherland the jockey. She won 3 times on him last year. Women would have had a second rooting interest in the race. I hope Rachel stays healthy and she races at Saratoga. Do you think Dunkirk will run in the Belmont? I think it is strange that Todd has more last place finishes in the Classics than wins. Your show is great for racing fans, and I thank you for that. I do think Dunkirk is on course for a Belmont start. And from Peter, Mike, I enjoyed your pedigree analysis leading up to the Derby, and I recall you mentioning that the mare Prayer Bell was in the female family of Muscat Man. Are you aware of the fact that Prayer Bell also appears in the pedigrees of Rachel Alexandra and Mind That Bird? Yes, I am. I'm going to detail that for you in a moment. I sure hope her fans had the Preakness Triple, and I sure wish I did. Peter, she is the dam of Silent Screen, who is the grandfather of the mother of Medaglia d'Oro, that's Rachel. She is the great-great-great-grandmother of Muscat Man, and as the aforementioned mother of Silent Screen, a New York bred, he is the maternal grandsire of Birdstone, the sire of Mind That Bird. That's how it works. She's quite a mare.
And finally, from Tim, and Tim talked about how I mentioned in the Preakness analysis that Calvin Burrell had chosen without a great deal of difficulty, and he said it during his interview, that he chose to ride the filly versus Mind That Bird. And Tim was wondering, part A, why I didn't apply that same logic in the Derby when Garrett Gomez chose Pioneer of the Nile over Dunkirk. Well, Tim, first and foremost, I select who I like, okay? I do the handicapping. Yeah, I probably would have appreciated the fact that Garrett had chosen Dunkirk over Pioneer of the Nile, but that was such a close call. In the call of Rachel over Mind That Bird, it was a no-brainer. Now, Tim goes on to take me to task a little bit. Mark, how could you not have picked Mind That Bird in your exacta? And I mean, Tim, I don't mind taking some criticism. I'm open for that. But I had one cold exact in the Preakness, as I told you. I used Muscat Man underneath Rachel. I ran first and third beat and a half length, and A. Barcoa, had a steady. I thought that was a pretty good pick, to be very honest with you. Just a little Monday morning quarterbacking. All the best to both of you. Tim, thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for your emails and letters, and for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District, OTB 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewermail@capitalotb.com. Couple of final stories. Broad Brush, a winner of 12 stakes during his career, including one of the closest non-dead heat finishes I've ever seen. In the 87 Big Cap, has been euthanized at the age of 26. Michael, he was not only quite a racehorse, but quite a stallion as well.
A couple of things here. When Mark and I spoke on Thursday night, I said to Mark, in my lifetime, this is one of the least appreciated, very, very good horses who's been forgotten. Just quickly, when he retired in 1987, he was 15th as an all-time money leader. Listen to where he went. He won the Meadowlands Cup in Jersey, the Wood and Suburban in New York, the Pennsylvania Derby in Pennsylvania. You all might remember he was running on the outside fence coming home. That was that famous the Ohio Derby, the Jim Beam in Kentucky, the Tezio in Maryland, his Santa Anita Handicap, placed in the Derby and Preakness. As a sire, he's kept the Domino line alive from the late 1800s. This is a direct male descendant of American Eclipse, Champion Farda Amiga, Schosberg, Best of Luck, and Concern, the Breeders' Cup Classic. A good one is gone, and a great race record, I gotta tell you, wow.
He beat Ferdinand in the 87 Big Cap. I can't hold my fingers close enough together. That's how close the finish was. And this one is kind of close to me. Barathea, shown here en route to victory in the 94 Breeders' Cup Mile. He is number one coming off the last turn, was euthanized on May 14th in Ireland because of complications from laminitis. He was very special to me that year. This was the year Lure was going for his third victory in a row in the mile. And I loved, not liked, I loved Barathea this day. Folks, it's not often that you love a horse and he wins pretty handily at $22.80. Luca Cumani trained him. He was the champion miler in England and Ireland, and Frankie Dettori put up a great ride that day. And finally, Garrett Gomez, who's been riding regularly here in New York, will return to Southern California on a full-time basis. His family is there. The short fields in Southern California will not only not hurt Garrett, they will work to his advantage because just about everybody wants Garrett riding for him. All right, time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Pete Persico directed, and Dan Hayes and Pat Peretta and Kurt Flick, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, and special thanks to this morning's guests, John Sheriffs, Calvin Burrell, and local owner Jay Riffenberry. Michael, have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Holiday, yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so very much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful and safe Memorial Day holiday weekend. Have a great upcoming week. And from all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week.